Have you ever been asked what salary are you looking for and suddenly forgotten every impressive thing you've ever done?
Today, we're talking about why that happens and why salary negotiation gets a lot easier when you understand how recruiters actually think.
Megan Applegate is a former recruiter and talent acquisition director who now helps professionals position themselves more strategically and stop guessing their way through the hiring process.
And by the end of this episode, we'll give you a simple Work Besties salary check in you can use before your next interview, review, or even offer conversation.
Hi, I'm Claude.
And I'm Jess.
We are corporate employees by day, entrepreneurs by night, and work besties for life.
Join us as we explore how work besties lift each other up, laugh through the chaos, and thrive together in every industry.
Work besties!
Work Besties, welcome back. This month is all about money, power, and negotiation, really asking for what you're worth.
And today we're tackling one of the most stressful parts of the conversation, the salary negotiation. But we're doing it with someone who has actually been on the other side of the hiring desk.
Megan, welcome to Work Bestie Who Podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate being here and sharing all of my insider information for those listening.
And we love that. We need inside information.
Asking for a friend.
So you've reviewed thousands of resumes, worked in recruiting and talent acquisition, hence, the inside. What do most professionals misunderstand about salary negotiation before the conversation even starts?
That's a great question. And I would say I'm quite guilty of this myself for thinking about years and years of being a professional before owning a business and understanding how this actually works. And I think the biggest mistake people make is that they don't understand what their true own market value is even going into the conversation. A lot of people will think of job search and they think of interviewing, and it seems like a really big, scary conversation, a big topic that's just like, nobody likes to do it. It's one of those most stressful things that you can go into. And my goal is to kind of change that perception into understanding that you have a lot of power as the candidate. A lot of people misunderstand. They just think it's not in my hands, it's not my decision. And then ultimately, yes, you cannot choose if somebody decides to hire you or not, but you need to have that confidence. And a lot of that comes from knowing what you're worth, right? And knowing that that conversation starts prior to you even thinking about looking for a new job. You have to know what your market value is. You have to know what you are an expert at, what that special sauce you have is, and understand how that sets you apart, have the proof before you even go into those conversations. So that's probably the biggest thing I can share, that if I could turn that around in people's minds, I think it would help a lot of people.
How do you find out about your market value?
I have a formula that I like to teach people when I work with clients. And a lot of that really boils down to, first of all, knowing where you want to go, knowing what is that next step. You got to find a baseline, right? So that baseline is going to Glassdoor, knowing kind of like what your job, especially in your market, right? Because as we know, a job title could say I am worth 120 in LA, but then more of like 80 if you're in like a smaller market. So you have to really understand, and get an average, because one company could be paying, $20,000 more for something with the same kind of job. So you have to really understand that first. And then once you get your baseline, then you gotta go to what I call like what is your scarcity? And there's a percentage that you can put on that. So if you have an extra certification, right? If there's something that you do special that nobody else does, not saying nobody, but like you're in a 20% of 100%, right? Differentiator, then you can take that baseline and add, let's just say another $10,000 to $20,000 on top of that, so that you're getting your baseline plus that scarcity differentiator. Then you take that and you look a little bit further into what really is my ROI. And this is a little bit more different or difficult for people. It really is looking at what proof do I have that I can actually show people of the fires that I put out, that the actual dollar amount you will lose if I leave you this company
Hmm.
B, right? And so like, and there's a little bit of a, are you just baseline? I do my job, I'm just kind of here. Or am I a little bit of a differentiator? Or am I an architect? Or am I a rarity? And if you can look at those fourth, then you can multiply that number usually by like point 0.1, point 0.2, point 0.3, point 0.4, it goes up to point 0.5, that rarity. And that should actually give you a true it should give you a true market value of what you are worth. Now that and I don't think a lot of people understand that, right? Like they go into this and they're just like, well, I've made this much money, and we're always complaining because we're hearing about, the grumblings of like this person makes more than me and blah blah blah, like water cooler topic, right? But if you can actually put those numbers together, the trick of it though is you got to be able to prove it, right? You can't just be like, this is just what Megan said and I come up with this number. But if you can truly identify with actual data driven, market metric driven numbers to say, this is truly what I've done for this company, then you can actually lead with that. And knowing that going in helps people with confidence too, in an understanding. You want me? There's a cost, right? That's what we do with jobs, right? It's weird to say, but we're really buying each other for our
Right.
talent and for what we do. There's a lot to be said if people could understand that about what they do. I think that it would really help those conversations and not waiting until the end.
How does a candidate's positioning early in the process affect what they can negotiate later?
I think is important to not wait till the end. Do I lead with that? I would say no. Like I said, I don't think that there's a reason for that because that just seems like all you care about is money.
Yeah.
But I would also say, don't wait to have it either. Maybe if it's your first screening interview with, if it's a large company, you're going to probably screen with a recruiter first. Maybe you don't have that because they're just trying to get a general idea if you're even qualified, for what they're looking for to make that next step. But once you can get in front of a decision maker, you need to be very upfront and very clear with what you're willing to do and from a salary range, and don't say one number. It really should always be um, a range, of what you're looking for.
So how far from each other the range should it be? It should be
Um,
20,000
I
or
would say 20.
20?
When we work with clients from a recruiting point of view, they usually give us, I would say, like a $10,000 range, but then in reality, I can see it stretch to 20. If it gets to 30, that's going to be hard. We'd have to find that purple unicorn typically. And if we can, a lot of times they'll go for it, but I would say 20,000 is, a really good range to have.
New York, you're supposed to list the
Need to list
range.
it.
Do you think that I see a range, but I feel my value is higher than the higher numbers? Is
Mhm.
it still worth it applying and saying, look, this is what I can bring, and this is how much I need, or whatever? Is it worth trying, or just don't go because it's not within your range?
I think it's worth trying with the caveat to say it can't be like $50,000 more. If you're above that range, I would say as long as you truly feel like you have the proof and can show why you are that special sauce, what are you bringing, your rarity of some kind, then you have the upper hand in that. And I do think it's worth noting because the other side of that conversation really boils down to understanding what is most important to you, because sometimes it's not necessarily the money, right? And so there's that point too of you could think, well, I love my job, but like I don't have a lot of flexibility and I'm super stressed out. So is it the work life balance that you want? Is it
Mhm.
potentially some equity in a company? Is it amazing healthcare benefits for a long time? I mean, there's so many different things that you can work within that you kind of have to understand what that total compensation package is, because salary is salary, right? So I do feel if you can prove it, and you have the backing and that confidence, then it worth having a conversation for, because that's truly what recruiters are looking for.
Mhm.
We're trying to mitigate risk and have certainty. If you come to me and my boss is like, I gave you the salary of 150 to 170, and you come to me and you're like, I've got all this proof and I'm at 190, and I can take that back to my boss and be like, dude, you've got to rethink this. Because
Yeah.
there's always room, especially with larger
Yeah.
companies. There's usually room, in some way. And maybe it can be within a 6-month review. It can be within a signing bonus. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to finagle what that can look like. And I think people misunderstand that if it's not within the realm of that base salary, then it's not worth it. And that's simply not true.
Megan, you commented earlier on proving your ROI.
Mhm.
So if you're within a company, it's a little easier to state and provide that to individuals to prove salary negotiation. But if you are interviewing from outside the company,
Mhm.
what's that right balance of listing out your successes and really showcasing that it was value-based versus sounding more like a list of responsibilities?
What we're always trying to do, whether it's writing a resume, whether it's showcasing LinkedIn profile, anything that we are talking about, we are making a business case for ourselves, right? And that is truly what will set you apart from anybody else, is when you can have that proof. And so if you are, even if you just are like, oh my God, I've never done this, start doing it now, because anything that you can showcase or think about future forward, because most of the time what happens is you don't think it's a big deal because it's your everyday
Yeah,
life.
Right.
it's
And
true.
so we're all guilty of that. Even when it comes to like writing a resume, so many people are just like, I write it and they're like, this doesn't even sound like me, Megan. Are you sure? And I'm like, yes, you are an expert. This is like what you've done, because we just have this imposter syndrome. This is my life. It doesn't seem like I am that rare, that commodity. And I'm like, but you actually are. And so
Right.
really, that's step one, is understanding you really have so much to offer. If you can think about it that way, even if you haven't been doing it, you need to start keeping track of all of those wins. As much as you think they're small, write them down. If you can put some numbers behind them, even if they're not revenue driven, people hire people that can solve problems. That's what we do, right? Even if that problem you're solving is to grow revenue, which seems like not a problem, right? But it actually is. And so it's really important to always have to be thinking, what problems have I solved today? Or what have I done that's different and outside of my job duties? Is like you just had mentioned, like anybody can say, I've done this, I've managed this many people, and I do this. And it's just like, well, you will then sit with the average of everybody else. And if you want to really get where you're going and look at it from a different point of view and be the business case and solve the problems of the future job that you want, you have to understand how those correlate. What you've done in your past correlates to how you can solve people's problems in the future.
Megan, is it fair to say it is okay if you haven't created that presence on LinkedIn, but you start just having that conversation really in the interview, as long as you have more of the storytelling aspect of the why this situates you different? Okay.
I don't mean to say if you haven't been doing that, you're screwed. That's not it. I'm just saying, like, if you haven't, start doing it. And if you haven't in your job interviewing, I still want people to think about it, because you do have it, even if you haven't been keeping track of it. I'm sure. I've told some of my clients that I work with, find who at work, even if you're not working there anymore. A lot of people, just like you guys, you're work besties, right? Like there's got to be somebody you probably had a really, or multiple people you had a good rapport. And sometimes it's just like being like, hey, can we just like sit and chat and have coffee? Can you kind of help just brainstorm and like revive some of these things that you remember that I've done? A lot of
Yeah.
times that will help you just be like, oh my gosh, I forgot that I collaborated with this different department and I was part of this solution. Because it doesn't always have to be what you've done. As long as you were part of a team, then there's no reason that you also can't utilize that in your business, right? In that story that you had.
I love that. Really
That's
asking someone that have seen, because it's hard to talk about ourselves, but
yeah.
really to see someone that see from the outside, it's really very, very helpful. So imagine you're in the top two candidate and now the real negotiation
Mhm.
arrives. Comes.
Mhm.
So asking for a friend.
That's fair.
So a lot of time it's very scary to negotiate because then you're afraid that they say, okay, I don't want this person because they are negotiating too hard. Is it a point where negotiating too hard might make you lose that opportunity?
There has to be some balance. There has to be some humility. You can't go in with your horns out because nobody wants that. But I think that if you have the personal skills plus the backup and you are willing to negotiate to a fair point, right? You don't want to like go in and just be this is it or super hard or I'm walking. That kind of attitude is not going to help you. But I will also say, if you've proven your case, you've got your business case and you've proven it and you can prove your worth and you've been super diligent, especially if you still have a job and you're like, this is what it's going to take for me to walk and
Live,
come to
yeah.
you, right? Because that's truly now you really have the upper hand.
Right.
I think that there's a balance between playing nicely in the sandbox and showing you've proved your value, but then in the end, you also have to think about most of the time somebody's going to have a little bit more wiggle room. But if you get to the very end and you just haven't even had this conversation and you're just like proven myself, I know what the salary ranges, but I haven't even told them what it would take and you get to the end and they give you an offer and you're just like I want $30,000 more. I think that's a big turnoff. You can ask for that, but that needs to be in a conversation prior to the actual offer coming. Because then you're just like, well, wait a second. If I'm the hiring
Right.
manager, it's just like, I mean, why did you not tell me that, 2 weeks ago? This probably hasn't been a short process, right? And you've gone through all of these panel interviews, especially if it's a large company, you're high up, a lot of money on the table. You have to understand that if you can prove it, a lot of times I'll tell people, know what your value is. Don't go in super hard and heavy at the very first time. Second interview, just give them an idea of what it potentially could take and just say, I am open to some negotiation around what that total compensation package could look like. Here's what is worth my value, my time right now, potentially to look at moving. But I also want to look at what the size and scope of this actual job is too, because there's something about saying, here's my range in the very beginning before you even learn what the job
Yeah.
itself is. And then what happens? You kind of pigeon your hole into a corner when all of a sudden it's a lot larger than maybe what you had in mind. So stating that up front, I also want to see the size and scope of this job before I truly land on a hard number. If you can do something like that and get that in there, then you're just giving yourself a little bit more wiggle room too.
Megan, if you're in that conversation and it doesn't get brought up, what's an authentic way to bring it up without it feeling forced?
Every time I, look at a new opportunity, I think it's super important to bring up what I'd be potentially looking for, when I'm talking to a new company. So that way, I'm interviewing you, you're interviewing me. Like, I just want you to understand what potentially it would take for me to consider something, in the beginning, just to be upfront, and very
Yeah.
transparent about like what it is. In again, a very like conversational, not hard-headed, not egotistical way to just say, I do have some boundaries around what it will take for me to leave what I'm doing. And if you don't have a job, I mean, you can't obviously use that tactic, but I still think that those that have the ability to kind of understand that you are interviewing them as much as they are interviewing you and you have a worth and it's not just whatever they say and we don't look desperate that's when you will win because people will feel comfortable and like that you were transparent. And if that truly is not a good fit and they're just like, unfortunately, like we just can't, then you're not wasting your time and you're not wasting their time there.
Now that you've gone through the process, you have the potential of getting this job,
Mhm.
what is left from a negotiation perspective? So if they say it's down to you and one other candidate, or we know it's going to be you, is there any other elements left that could still be negotiated?
And it goes back to what's most important to you at that point. Now that you know the company, you know the people, you know a little bit more about their culture, you know if it's truly something that you want, right? Because that also plays into it too. I mean, again, if we're just a bull in the china shop and we're just going through and we're just like, I'm the best, right? And but there has to be some idea of like, is this truly an ideal job for you? Right? Like there's that too. And if it is, then you have to go back to looking at what is most important to you. And then at that point, do you have some flexibility around if it's not quite this 180,000 that they offer you because there is a really other good candidate that is that you mean you probably don't know that, but you're going to guess that like they also have been able to demonstrate their proof. Then you have to come to the thought of what would make me truly most happy. If it's I can back down to $10,000, but I want 4
Another
weeks
week of
vacation.
vacation. Yeah.
Yeah. Like then it's just kind of like, okay, so where can I potentially meet you more in the middle than potentially somebody else? Right. And if it's truly down to what you want, there's a little bit to say around not accepting an offer immediately either.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh,
Hmm.
can you explain a bit more that?
Yeah. So this goes back to your comfort level and how confident you are, right? Because again, if you've shown you're a true person, you're not egotistical and you're a team player and all these things, but if they come to you and say, okay, we're ready to make an offer and they give you an offer, if you are just like, done, I'll take it. Right. Then it's like, even if you want to, you're just like, they're like, oh, wow, that's, okay. I mean,
Quick. Yeah.
yeah, like that, well, not a little bit desperate, but I do think that there's a little bit to be said to say, I truly appreciate this offer. I am very excited about, the potential because you always want to show your enthusiasm for the job. I think a lot of people also get that wrong. You want to be somebody that shows a lot of excitement towards your interest in the role. That will help you as well. However, when you get to that point of negotiation and they make you the offer, and at that point that you have the upper hand and that you were chosen out of all the candidates, I think it's rightful to say, even if you're just like, oh my God, that's like totally awesome and I'll take this job tomorrow. Like, so appreciate it. I'm super excited about this. Can you give me 24 hours or 48 hours to think about it? Because again, then it shows you're going to think about it. You potentially might negotiate some more, right?
From the flip side, they come to you, they offer you pretty close to what you were expecting or have been stating along. Should you still wait the 24 or 48 hours and still have the ability to still negotiate? Can you say, love this, was also thinking you could offer another week of vacation or the 5K more or something?
I say as long as it's not ridiculous, yes. Right?
Okay.
You can't go back and be like, especially after you've given
Yeah,
them a
well,
range and
50K
blah, blah,
more.
Yeah,
blah.
yeah.
And then be like, okay, it's going to take me another $20,000. That's like, you
Yeah,
just wasted
yeah.
my time. No, thank you. Right? But if you're just like, I'd love to join you. I'm so excited. I've done a lot of thought about this. I feel like I'm a great fit, and I think I've done my due diligence and proved why I would be a benefit to you and help this company succeed moving forward. But I also have a job and would love another 5 days of vacation, right? Or like a lot of times it will be if you're relocating or a signing bonus where it's a one-time thing and it's not like I want $10,000 more every single year, then you've got some power there. But I wouldn't, unless you just haven't talked about it at all. But then again, then it's
Yeah, no, this
then
would be a
you haven't then you're not on the right foot to begin with. So
yeah.
yes, but it needs to be something attainable and small that's not going to break the bank or their faith in the fact that you've just not been transparent.
At this point, it's very rare that they would take away that offer, right?
Yeah, I mean, if they've made you an offer, and especially if you've told them what you want, if it's over what they initially said the range was, you have to be careful. But as long as
Yeah.
it's something small and you have, again, you are in the driver's seat at that point, I think most companies expect some kind of negotiation. Let me just say that. There's always some room, some wiggle, as long as you have presented yourself and they are super eager and think that you are the right fit. There is room as long as it's not ridiculous, because then you've just lost their trust altogether.
Awesome. Megan, if someone listening wants to get better at salary negotiation, where should they start this week?
The first step I would take is going back to that market value and understanding that, and I wish I could say I had a corner on that little formula I gave you, but I don't, right? You will be able to find that on the internet if you look that up. So, if you're looking to start, you got to figure out that baseline. What is the baseline? And then you'll get the light bulb effect of like, "Oh my gosh, I'm being totally underpaid," or, "Hey, I'm actually doing pretty good," right? Of where I'm at and understanding that, and that's really the first step in truly understanding where you have that upper hand and where to start.
Perfect.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Megan. For the listeners out there, please think about what Megan's been saying and take that next step.
And that confidence does not come from memorizing a perfect line, right? It really
No.
comes from understanding, knowing our value, and really showing up to during the interviews.
Right.
Yeah.
So if this resonated with you, please send this to your work bestie and chat about it with them. You never know where that next lead will come from.
Yep. And to all the work besties,
Keep
supporting each other.
Remember, whether you're swapping snacks in the break room, rescuing each other from endless meetings, or just sending that perfectly timed meme, having a work bestie is like having your own personal hype squad.
So keep lifting each other up, laughing through the chaos, and of course, thriving. Until next time, stay positive, stay productive, and don't forget to keep supporting each other.